Hi, this is Jamie Chambers of Weary Pines,
This is Don McLennan of Weary Pines, and you're listening to
The Graveyard Show.
Welcome to the Graveyard.
And welcome to another edition of the Graveyard Show podcast. I am your caretaker, and the graveyard is open. Well, the boys from Weary Pines are here. You heard them at the top of the show. Jamie Chambers and Don McLennan Jr. will be joining me in just a moment, and I cannot wait to have them on the program. They are really two good guys, and I really appreciate them being cool with me moving them to this podcast. They were supposed to be on the last one. So I appreciate them being really cool about that. This interview is going to be done a little differently, but I'll get into that in just a moment. If you're not familiar with Weary Pines, well, if you've seen the movie In Search of Darkness or In Search of Darkness Part 2, well, you're familiar with their work because they scored both films. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But before we get to that, that's odd. Oh, sorry, this is a bit unusual. Hang on. This is the backdoor phone to the show. Hang on, let me see who this is. Hang on. Hello? Hey, what's going on? How are you? No, listen, no, I of course, I'd love to have you on. Yeah, Weary Pines is going to be on in just a second, so once I'm done with that, I'll have you on and we'll talk about that. Definitely. Okay, cool. Hang on for 1 second. Sorry about that, guys. Listen, hey, got some news for you. If you're a fan of 80s science fiction films, there's a new film coming out at the end of the year called In Search of Tomorrow, and ironically enough, I'm going to have some information for you about how you can purchase the film. It's going to be done just like In Search of Darkness Part 2. It's you can purchase different levels. You can get the Blu-ray. There are all kinds of other stuff. But I'll get into that on the other side of this interview. I have a special guest on the horn that will join me on the other side of the Weary Pines interview. So quickly, if you want to get in touch with the show, there are two ways. As I've always said, the email address gyspodcast@gmail.com, gyspodcast@gmail.com. The other way is what I announced on the previous podcast, which is the Graveyard Show podcast has joined social media. But it's not your traditional social media. It's not the Bluebird and it's not the camera. No, this is a horror social media app and it's called Slasher. And if you're not familiar with it, you can find it on your mobile device. Just go to the App Store, look up Slasher, and download it, and you can create a profile. It's really quick, and it's really easy. You can find me on Slasher at Graveyard Show Podcast. At Graveyard Show Podcast. I am doing some posts on there, and if you want to friend me, fire me off a friend request, and let me know you're a listener. Listeners always go to the front of the line. Quickly, hey, folks, we made it. Of all movies on Turner Classic Movies a few weeks ago, Slumber Party Massacre was on. I'm not kidding. No joke. I never would have thought in a million years Slumber Party Massacre would ever be on TCM. It was. It's awesome. If you get Turner Classic Movies and you can find it online in their library. It's on there. I think it's awesome. Whoever made that decision, you're the best. That is so cool. So quickly, Weary Pines. Now, normally I do my interviews inside my breezy, some would say very windy graveyard, but I like it here. It's a refreshing breeze that blows through here. And also in the past, I've introduced you to my caretaker's quarters, where I've presented some of my older interviews with horror hosts. Well, this one I'm going to try a little differently. Since Weary Pines was so awesome about being bumped a show, I wanted to give them a little bit extra love, and I wanted to present their music to you. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to my music room. Yes, I have a music room here. Sometimes the caretaker needs to relax a little bit. My trusty werewolf, Lawrence, is getting it set right now and putting a playlist together. And what we're going to do is you're going to be hearing the music from Weary Pines underneath the interview. So there's going to be something probably like 30 or so different pieces of music you'll be hearing. So this way, if you aren't familiar with them, you can hear the different types of music that they've produced. A lot of it's going to be from the In Search of Darkness films, just so you know. And I'll get into where you can find all that on the other side. In the meantime, as you hear in the background, well, the grave is being dug. So it's time for us to get to the music room. Weary Pines is here. It's time for me to start playing some music and get to work. Well, if you saw the 1980s horror documentary In Search of Darkness Part 1 or Part 2, you will be very familiar with my guests, as they were the ones who provided the score for both of those films. Jamie Chambers and Don McLennan Jr. make up the synthwave band Weary Pines, and along with In Search of Darkness soundtracks, other releases include the soundtrack to the movie The Lakeside Killer, as well as their self-titled debut album, which you can get on their website, wearypines.com. That's wearypines.com. As well as you can find them on SoundCloud and Spotify. And this is a real pleasure welcoming in Jamie and Don to the Graveyard. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
It's great to have you. This is great. I mean, Jamie, you and I have been emailing for the last couple months, putting this thing together, and I'm really thrilled that here we are. I appreciate you both. I appreciate both of you being really cool about being bumped one extra show. That was very cool of you to do. I appreciate that. And this is a first for the Graveyard Show podcast. You guys are my first guests to ever be interviewed from the UK. So congratulations. You win nothing, but
Hey, awesome. This is actually our first time being interviewed.
Oh, well, I love this. Well, this is great. Well, well, let's have this be fun. That's what I'd like for this to be. So, I love the scores for both of the In Search of Darkness films. I'll get into that in just a little bit. I thought I'd start from the beginning, though. Jamie, let's start with you first. Do you remember the first time you were interested in music?
I actually didn't get interested in music until I was about 18. In the UK, when you study your exams, you pick your subjects when you're 14, and around the time that you would pick music for that series of exams, you would have to know that you'd want to study that for your final exams, for your final, and go off and do that at university. And so I didn't get interested in music until it was too late. I didn't pick up an instrument until I was 16, 17. And I ended up leaving school early to go and study music specifically at college so that I could go on and do it at university.
Wow. 16, that's pretty late. Don, what about you?
Yeah.
Well, my uncle had a Jean-Michel Jarre mixtape cassette, and I would listen to that now and then. And that would lead on to like the Eagles, the Police, Pavarotti, and then classical music. And for some reason then I was kind of forced to take classical piano lessons. I don't know why, but I was forced. And I just kind of enjoyed writing music then. Otherwise, I would just probably be listening to it today, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah. So for you, Don, the first instrument you played was piano. I'm sorry, Jamie, which was the first instrument you learned?
I think I took up the bass guitar, and then that led to the guitar, and then eventually piano. And now piano would be my main instrument.
Nice. I love the bass. That's great.
Do you play any music?
I learned as a kid when I was really young. I had a Hammond organ that I learned.
Awesome.
And I hated it. I think I hated it was because I didn't want to do it, and my folks wanted me to do it, and I'm glad they did, because what's so ironic for me is that I love music so much. So the fact that I was so against learning how to play an instrument is just so stupid. But now I'm like, well, I should take piano lessons. Well, I should I should learn how to play bass guitar, and of course I never do. But no, I'm a big like for when I'm listening to music, the bass guitar has always stood out to me because of Geddy Lee, listening to Rush a lot as a kid, and Steve Harris from Iron Maiden. I mean, I don't know how that guy plays the instrument that fast like that without his tendons exploding, but he's awesome. And then I was a Kiss fan as a kid, so I just like Gene Simmons anyway, because I just liked his character and I liked the songs. So it all just tied in for me. But as I got older and got more into jazz. Bill Evans is a huge. I love listening to Bill Evans, and
Awesome.
so that's definitely for the piano. If I ever would learn, that's kind of like how I would like to learn. But yeah, so that's really cool. So when did you realize, Don, when music was actually your calling? This is going to be something you were going to be doing for professionally.
It's hard to kind of pinpoint. I would say I would have been about 14 when I first heard System of a Down, and their lyrics and what they did that was so kind of strange and unusual compared to the normal metal that you would get back in those days.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of inspired me, and I just kind of, I don't really have like an answer to that. It just kind of happens, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I know that System of a Down was kind of the birth of that.
Gotcha. Jamie, what about you?
Yeah.
Was there like that sort of epiphany, or was this sort of like kind of like, oh, I really like doing this?
Yeah, to be honest, I think the problem is in primary school or in high school when you do music lessons, at least back then, the issue was that you were learning very old school church music and classical music. And, these days kids get to study, when they study music at school, even primary school, they get to learn their favorite pop songs.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was the same. Like in school, I actually did play violin when I was a kid. And I don't really have any memory of it. I didn't enjoy it. I was forced to do it. And I think, like Dom, when we were 14, we would have been friends when we were 14. We bonded over listening to metal, or the kind of the pop side of metal, I guess. System of a Down would have been Smashing Pumpkins, that kind of thing. And like playing in bands. Although me and Don, we didn't play in a band. We were friends, great friends for years, but we've actually never played in a band until we were adults. Together.
Nice. So as far as musical influences, obviously the UK has tons of musical influences. Would you say that what would you say your musical influences were? I heard System of a Down and Smashing Pumpkins. Would you say that those were influences?
Yeah, it was the mainstream kind of pop rock metal in the 90s. Yeah, the 2000s.
Yeah.
I don't know what age I'm. Yeah, in the 2000s when we were teenagers. The same the kind of counterculture music that teenagers would listen to. The mainstream stuff, Nirvana, System of a Down, that kind of thing.
Nice. Don, how about you?
Honestly, it's kind of all over the place. Ranges kind of from the Seatbelts to Eminem,
Sure. It's nice to have, I'm kind of the same way. Like I'll listen to metal, I'll listen to pop. Like I can listen, like I said, Iron Maiden, I can listen to Maiden, and I could pop in Duran Duran and Hall & Oates and be like, all right, this is cool. And then I could switch over to, Miles Davis, or, I could pop in Thriller and listen to that. So I think it's nice, especially if you're, a musician or if you're composing. I think having that wide range is tremendous because it opens you up to just more than just, oh, well, this is it. I listen to rock, I listen to hip hop, I listen to metal, and that's it. Yeah. And I think that's pretty awesome. So how did you guys meet?
We actually met when we were 4 years old.
Yeah.
We were in the same class in primary school, and I've had one very distinct memory of that age, and it was meeting Dawn. Funnily enough, it was the first day of school. And, being 4 years old, I was very nervous about leaving my mum. And my mum walked me into the classroom and she told me, don't worry, the parents are staying. I'm not leaving you here alone. And I was really nervous and really scared. And my teacher noticed that I was nervous, and she walked me over and she introduced me to Dawn and said, oh, this is Dawn. And Dawn told me a joke, and I remember falling over laughing and didn't look back. My mum was gone. I didn't think about it again.
Oh my gosh. That is an awesome story.
Yeah. And you know what? I don't have any memories of the rest of primary school.
Don, do you remember? Don, do you remember it like that, or do you have a different?
I can't remember my childhood at all.
Yeah, I don't remember. I don't remember anything else in primary school except for meeting Dawn, which is really strange.
That is such a great story. I love that story. I'm gonna have to.
We didn't.
I'm gonna have to play that story for my wife later. She'll love that.
I was going to say we actually didn't. We were friends then, but we only became friends again when we were teenagers later in life.
Okay.
Yeah.
We went to different schools, so it's quite funny that I remember that.
So what happened? So you guys, you became friends really young, and then you just kind of went your separate ways. And then how did you guys meet back up again, Don?
Oh God, probably through just general shared nightlife locations, like like bars and stuff. Just bumped into each other, drunk, and just went, "Hey, how's it going?" Fine, yeah. That's
yeah, teenagers. When we were teenagers, we would have become friends again, and we were drinking and getting up to no good.
I don't know what you're talking about. So you guys reconnect, and so at what point did you decide Weary Pines was going to be a band you're going to start, a group you're going to start? How did that whole thing come about?
I moved to Leeds in England after high school. I came over here for university, and we were close friends. We continued to be friends, but we met up in about 2018. I came over to Ireland for a trip, and we decided to have dinner together and have a few beers, and we got chatting. We found it amusing with the fact that both of us had pursued music, but our friendship, we've been friends for so many years, we'd never ever played music together or written music together.
Yeah.
And I at that time, I sort of, at my degree, I specialized in music production, and I was producing bands, and I had done the degree. I'd done part of my degree in music production for film and television, so it was something I was interested in. But we got chatting, and at that time, Dawn's also a filmmaker, and we thought it would be a great idea if we used Dawn's filmmaking experience and my music production experience and try to launch a music production company. And we picked horror because, again, we just found it amusing that we're both obsessed with horror movies, and neither of us had ever sat down to write horror music.
Mm.
Wow.
And that was it. It was born.
So, well, you guys are fans of horror, so I have to ask the obvious. What films are some of your favorites?
I'd have to go for probably Fright Night, Shocker,
yeah,
The Thing. Probably my top three,
Okay. Jamie?
Yeah.
My top three. I love the French movie Martyrs. Have you seen that?
I have not.
That's a really, it's not an 80s movie, but it's very, it's a shocking movie. I recommend it.
Okay.
I think there's actually an American remake as well, but the French version is...
No, I'll go to the original.
Yeah, it's very, very unsettling movie. And then, as an 80s movie, it's John Carpenter. Definitely Return of the Living Dead is my all-time favorite 80s movie.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know why. I just love that movie.
It's an awesome film. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's really...
It's just a wild... I'm old enough to remember when it came out, and I remember when I saw it, I was like, "This movie is awesome."
Yeah, I don't know what makes it so special, but it's my favorite.
I think because it's just so insane, and it's got the soundtrack. Obviously, it's just once you hear Return of the Living Dead, you think about, do you want to party? And and of course Linnea Quigley's famous scene in the cemetery, and just the zombies talking and the comedy. Because what's so funny is that
the comedy.
Yeah, James Karen, who plays one of the guys working in the mortuary, I grew up in New Jersey, and as a kid we had a supermarket called Pathmark, which was one of the main supermarkets there, and James Karen was the spokesperson for that, so he would do all the commercials. And for years I thought he worked there or owned it as a kid, and then that movie came out and I go, why is the Pathmark guy in this movie? And, no, you idiot, he's an actor. I'm like, oh, okay.
That's awesome.
So Return of the Living Dead is just fantastic. So it's really interesting because you both mentioned Carpenter. Obviously, with Carpenter, he sort of, I would have to say, he kind of gave birth to a lot of the modern day music with the synthesizer and the piano, with Halloween, and obviously his contributions to the score of The Thing, on top of Ennio Morricone's, of course, but everything that he did with Escape from New York. So obviously those guys, he must have been an influence on you guys, I would think, right? Or was it just coincidence that you liked him, or liked his movies, and never really thought about the music?
I think, yeah. I mean, I wasn't. It wouldn't be my top musical influence until we were sitting down to write 80s horror music. Me personally, Don's more of the synthesizer guy. Don.
Well, for me, it's like you mentioned the thing there now. Funnily enough, it's that bass in the main theme.
Yeah.
It really does it for me, man. And I kind of maybe start with bass lines more often than I should. You know?
Yeah. I know, because it punches you right after those credits open, and they have that establishing shot. Yeah, it's like I can imagine. I have not seen that in a movie. I don't think I've ever seen it in a movie theater, because when it came out, I was really young. Although I did see Alien when I was 9, but I didn't see that. That's a whole other story. I didn't see the thing in the movie theaters. I saw it on TV, but I can only imagine going now to a screening. And when that first establishing, and you hear that dum dum dum, the place probably goes crazy, because I mean, everybody knows it. And so then guys, would you say then, when you created Weary Pines, well, first of all, let me ask you, where did the name come from?
John?
I think it's a fictional cemetery in a video game.
Oh, okay. Which video game?
Manhunt 2, I think.
Okay, so a fan of the game, so you kind of went Beatles, and you lifted the. This is your Eleanor Rigby. That's great. Oh, that's fantastic. I love that. Okay, so then the original idea then was to become well, let me ask you. So when you created the band, what was the original idea of music that you guys wanted to create?
The idea, honestly, we wanted to write modern horror music. I mean, it's still one of our main goals to score modern feature films. But, you know, there's a lot of subgenres of horror music, and Don's got a lot of experience with synthesizers. It made sense to, we had to basically come up with a portfolio of music to pitch in order to get some jobs. And the first one we picked was 80s horror because of Don's experience with synths. So we decided to write a bunch of 80s horror sounding music. That was the first step. And then obviously our first big project was In Search of Darkness, and a lot of the sounds, the synthwave genre is a big thing with that project. So that sort of turned into us deciding to write synthwave music or synthwave inspired music. And so then it turned very quickly from wanting to write horror music for film projects to also releasing music as an artist, as a synthwave artist, or as a synthwave inspired band, that kind of thing. So,
Don, let me ask you, for those people that aren't really familiar with the term synthwave, can you describe what kind of genre of music synthwave is?
It's kind of nostalgia based, isn't it? It's like created by people who didn't experience the 80s but missed the 80s. Yeah. Does that make any sense? It's kind of, it's nostalgia based. I can't really describe it myself. It's just, that's what it is.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's what, because it's huge. Like, I know on YouTube, there are tons of synthwave videos out there where people just put these graphics to the music, and it's like, stuff that I would see as a kid, like on a Commodore 64 or something I would go to an arcade to see. For me, it's really kind of cool, because having been lucky enough to live through that time with everything going on, it's really kind of cool to be like, wow, I mean, this is still relevant, which is shocking to me 40 years out, that, that time period is so relevant to this day.
It's strange.
Yeah, it really is. So let's talk about how you guys work together. So when you put together an idea for either a song or your albums, how like, give us a little peek behind the curtain. How do you guys work?
We originally thought that the most logical thing to do would be to write songs together. And pass, because we record our music, we've got our own studios at home. The idea is that we would both start demos, and we would pass the songs back and forth and add to them and that kind of thing. But it's actually worked out that we just split the projects down the middle. We both can write individually for a project, and yet use the same kind of aesthetics, the same sounds, and again, the same production. That's the sort of important part. That sort of gels the music together as one, even though you might not know it as a listener that one song's been written by me and one song's been written by Don. That's, to be honest, that's how we do it. Don, we split the songs. We have a preparation session where we go through what needs to be done, and we create a list of styles and a list of sort of possible songs and references, and then we'll sort of split it evenly down the middle, or we'll maybe assign certain tracks to each other based on our own experience.
So that's really interesting. So like, I know it's kind of general. How long does it take to let's just pick a random song in your head. Like, how long would it put together, like when you come up with an idea, to actually having something that you can go, oh, here it is? I know it's kind of a weird question. Just something,
The process it's different for every song, but basically we split it into writing sessions. So you might have an idea of something that you need to create a certain length, and then it might take a few hours or a full day to write one song, and then we split it into that process. Once the song's finished, then we move that onto the production process, which would be the mixing and the mastering and the editing arrangement. So it's kind of a hard question to answer. Yeah, it depends totally on the song, style, length.
Yeah.
But we do everything in-house. We've got our own studios. We do try to hire other musicians and mixing engineers if we can. We like the idea of having live players on our music, but we do have the ability to do it all, just the both of us. I do more of the mixing and the engineering production side, and Don would be more of a genius composer who can pull a masterpiece. He can sit down at a piano. Don can sit at a piano right now. If you gave him a certain style, he could sit at a piano, and I'm confident he could write a 5-minute song out of his head in one take.
Wow. Wow. That's incredible. Don,
Definitely.
Are you up for it, Don? Let's do it. All right, 3, 2, 1, go.
Piano with me.
That's really cool. I mean, do you think with modern technology, I mean, obviously that's helped everybody, right? I mean, it's helped. I mean, I'm doing my own thing here. I mean, for you guys as musicians, I mean, modern technology must be just brilliant, because you can sit, and in this case, the two of you can sit and do your own thing and create something that back, 10, 15, 20 years ago, you'd have to go and rent out space.
Yeah, you'd have to rent a studio. You'd have to hire a number of people. The budget would be very high. It's crazy. I mean, when I did my degree about 10 years ago, the core of the course was how to record music, how to arrange music, mix music, and produce music as high quality and like shiny and crisp as possible. And now the way that the music industry is going, Don and I are having to use production techniques to make our music sound like more plastic or cheaper or more 80s.
Yeah.
Like we have to work backwards to make it sound worse than it is in terms of production.
Oh yeah, I know. It's so funny. Like, I know, like, one of the plugins is like they call vinyl, and everybody like, oh, we love the pops and hisses. I'm like, I thought the whole idea with digital music is not to have the pops and the hisses. Now you want to put the damn things back in.
That's literally something we have to do during mastering. We have to add in the hiss and add in the warped, the warble gosh. Or the warp that comes with like John Carpenter's music. You can hear the tape wobbling.
Yeah, I know. It's like, whoa, up, yeah, I remember that. Well, it's what I love too is like listening to soundtracks. You can hear the musicians turning the music. You can hear like, things happening in the scoring session. I love that because it's just like, it just feels real, or like I'm kind of taking a peek into the actual live moment, which is really nice. Yeah.
You can hear there's a lot of piano sample libraries where they intentionally record the seat squeaking when the player's playing.
Oh wow! So
you're recording using the sample library. You're playing it on a MIDI keyboard, and it sounds like somebody sat in a studio with a high-end mic system, and you can pick up the actual breathing from the person who recorded the samples.
Wow, that's hilarious.
Yeah, it's very funny.
So let's talk about In Search of Darkness. So you guys get your break with that. How did you end up meeting Robin Block, the producer of the film?
really, really good time and good luck. At the time, we put together our first portfolio of music. As I said, it was the first batch was all 80s inspired kind of horror music, and there's no way that you're told how to find composing jobs. There's no job boards or communities online where you can search for jobs and pitch. At the time, we had no idea how it worked, and so what we started doing is searching through the likes of Fiverr.com and Upwork. Upwork is a website where you can basically post a job, and you get people pitched for the job, and you can search for keywords. So you can search for music, composer, horror, that kind of thing. And there's not horror composer jobs posted there ever, but by using the keyword horror, I saw an ad that Robin had posted where he was hiring a graphic designer for a horror documentary. And I was able to use the internet to find Robin's details and email him personally. I just sent him over. Again, we had the music ready. So a lot of that music actually ended up on the first documentary. I emailed him, and he replied within a minute saying that the music was perfect.
Wow.
So it's just luck, isn't it? It's always, having the foot in the door or meeting somebody who can connect you.
So who did Robin connect with? You, Jamie, or are you done?
It was Jamie first, yeah.
Yeah, it was me. I tend to do most of the emailing and that kind of thing.
Yeah. So when you come back and you tell Don, hey, I think we got the gig, Don, what were you thinking?
Fantastic, finally.
The big break.
Yeah.
Well, back in December, or no, actually last year, November, I had the director of, what turned out to be part 1 and part 2. David Weiner was on my show. And back in January, when he was here talking about part 2, I asked him about you guys, and I'm going to play you a little clip about what he said.
I heard Weary Pines when I was taking a walk. And I was walking around and in my neighborhood, and I live in a nice hilly, mountainy nature area. And that music was the soundtrack to my walk, and I knew immediately that these guys were the perfect fit. And it's a duo. They're so great to work with, and it was a blessing to be able to get Weary Pines to score not only part 1 but part 2.
Pretty cool, huh?
Awesome.
He's a sweetheart.
I mean, that's pretty awesome. So tell me, tell us about the process, because when I see something like this, which, obviously you're talking about 9 hours worth of 2 movies. Tell me about this process. Obviously, I know you guys had done some music prior to the film. How much of it was stuff that you had and said, here, you can use this, or we can use this for the film, and how much of it was, okay, we need to do some original music here, and how did that work?
Because it was a documentary, we weren't scoring to film. We didn't see any of the project before. We submitted our first batch of songs that we'd written before we'd even heard of the project, and then it was a matter of working backwards. Then after it had been filmed, David and the editor Samuel Way, they were basically using the music they had to fit the scenes, and then it was a matter of David coming back to us a few months later and letting us know what else was needed. So he gave us a lot of reference tracks and a lot of notes, and we wrote very intentional music then for this second half.
So, how long of a process was this putting together? Because I know obviously a 4.5 hour documentary. It takes some time. So I mean, for you guys, how much back and forth was it in terms of like, okay, how many months would you say you guys were putting this thing together?
What do you reckon, Don?
Jesus. 3 months, was it? 2 months?
Yeah, maybe 3 months for the first documentary, and the second documentary, they actually used quite a lot of the original music, and we wrote 15 new pieces of music. That probably took us about a month, and we've just finished scoring In Search of Tomorrow, and that's taken us probably about 3 or 4 months. I would say me personally, I've done about 200 hours per project.
Wow.
Yeah,
it's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot of time.
Wow. So are you presenting the final mixes to each of your pieces and then you're sending them to the post team and then they're dropping them in, or are you doing them on your end when you're not getting any of the movie, right? So you're just basically sending them out and they're putting them in the mix.
They're putting them in. Yeah, it's the editor Sam. He's great, by the way.
Yeah.
Shout out to Sam. He's fantastic. Sam, basically him and David are getting together during the editing process and basically making the music fit. And if there's any problems or anything missing, they come back to us. But the process is submit the big batch and then come back to us with what's left or what's missing.
Sure. I mean,
which is not. Yeah. It's not the way it would be done traditionally. You know, if we were scoring a feature film,
sure,
or we've done a few indie movies, we would normally get like a first cut of the project so we can score the screen.
Yeah. I mean, that had to have been pretty cool when you got to see the final product. I can't imagine that you were like, oh, I mean, it must have been like, wow, this is really cool. I love the open too, because you have that lead in the first movie, you have that lead in, sort of like the prologue, and then your music kicks in over the titles. That must have been pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome. We saw some of the marketing material before we saw the first documentary. So that was seeing our music underneath John Carpenter being interviewed was probably a really special moment.
That was good, yeah.
And we got together to watch the first documentary, and I came over to Ireland and we got very drunk. I'll say no more. I got a bit too drunk.
Well, I think you earned it at that point.
Yeah, definitely. We've not seen In Search of Darkness Part 2 yet.
Oh, you have to. It's great.
Yeah, we just after the writing process, you want to take a bit of a break, and then you want to watch it with fresh eyes and fresh ears.
Totally understand. Yeah, I totally understand. Because once, here's how crazy it was when I interviewed David back in it was actually October, because it was leading into Halloween, and I told him after we were doing the interview, and I'm like, I'm going to break it up into 2 parts, and he teased part 2, which he wound up using. I used in the first podcast with him because they had the crowdfunding going, and I'm like, as soon as I got off the phone with David, I'm like, I'm going to crowdfund this thing. So the show is in the credits on the second movie, which was really cool, because I was like, I got to do this. And when I saw the second movie, I was like, wow, this is just great. Because
awesome.
It's very similar, yet it's different, and I think you guys are going to really enjoy it. Especially the opening graphics, again, really cool, very different than the first one, and they kind of even do a little jump scare in there too, which was fun. So
awesome.
Yeah, I think you guys are really going to love it. I mean, he couldn't have picked anyone better to score this. You guys did the music's perfect for it. You have so many cuts of music in the soundtrack. I know when I saw the soundtrack, I think there's like 40 cuts or something crazy where I was like, oh my, or maybe even more. No, it's like 80.
There's 80 songs and about 2.5 hours of music.
Yeah. I mean, that's insane. I was like, holy, but it's like, yeah, of course, the movie's 4 hours. What the hell you expect? There's some great stuff in it. I wanted to ask you, because there's one cue that is in part 2 that's very different than the others. And of course, I'm forgetting the name of it off the top of my head, but it sounds like there is a violin that's being used in it. What is that? Is it a violin?
I would take a guess and say it's a sampled violin. So again, like with music production in 2021, you can get sample libraries for almost any instrument. And back in the day, you would have used these sample libraries to create a SketchUp.
Yep.
They sound real enough, like orchestral. You could write music for an orchestra, and then you'd send it off to be recorded by a real orchestra. But now, in 2021, these sample libraries sound as real as you can get. You can write music for an orchestra and make it sound like it's been recorded by an orchestra with just your fingers.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess that was a sampled violin.
It was so interesting. It was so different. And I love that you guys, like, obviously synthwave, you gotta deliver the goods, right? It's got to be synthwave, but then there are other cues that kind of go off the beaten path, which I really enjoy as well. So talk to me about another film that you have an original soundtrack for, the Lakeside Killer. Tell me, what is that? Don, is that a movie that you had made?
That's a film we were hired to compose for.
Okay.
It's a short.
Yeah. There was something we were hired to write the music for, and then the film never got released or never got filmed. So we just released the music.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Because I thought maybe since Don's a filmmaker, maybe it was something that he had done, and you guys, why not go Carpenter, direct it, score it? Why not?
That was somebody hired us. The film fell through, and we enjoyed the music that we wrote, so we released it.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
So I didn't touch on this since we're on a subject. So Don, you're a filmmaker. So tell me about that. What kind of movies were you doing? Horror movies? Were you doing dramas? Were you doing comedies? What style was your genre?
Honestly, I don't really have a style. It's because I haven't made my first film yet, so to call myself a filmmaker is an insult to filmmaker. But I'm working on my first short film called Black Rainbow, and it's kind of a drama thriller kind of thing. But it wouldn't venture into horror or anything like that.
Oh, nice. Well, I know these two guys who score movies. Oh, that's very cool.
Sure. Don, you've written all the music for Black Rainbow already, right?
I've written the music for it already. Yeah, everything's ready to go. Just need the bloody funding for it.
Why am I not surprised? That is very cool. So tell me, what's interesting is that on your website on wearypines.com, you guys are like doing something I'd never seen before. You're giving music away. You're like, here are MP3s, here are CDs. How did that whole thing come about?
I've been doing this course, a marketing course, actually, for the past years. The company's called Entrepreneur, and they teach musicians to run independent music businesses, to make a living writing music. And I've been testing out a lot of their strategies with Weary Pines, and do you know what? A lot of them, they've been working very well. The idea is that you want to introduce your music to a cold audience, people who've never heard of you, and you want to convert people from listeners into fans, and then convert them from fans into customers if you eventually release your music as a product. That's it in a nutshell. So a lot of it's digital marketing techniques, and I'm still learning and trying it out with Weary Pines. It seems like a good thing to do.
It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, the idea really is to build a mailing list, and not just to build it to send spam emails to, but basically nurture your fans outside of social media. So it's the idea that if you lost all your follows on Instagram, or if Instagram was shut down tomorrow, that you would still have your mailing list. So we've got like quite a large mailing list, and we've not actually tried many of the strategies yet. The idea is basically scale the mailing list, continue to nurture the fans, and connect with people on a personal level. That's the idea, really.
Yeah.
I think that's really, really smart, especially as we see as social media platforms are kind of getting weird to some degree.
Yeah.
Especially here in the States, we're having all kinds of weird things going on. People getting, shut down, and stuff getting shut down, and I don't know, and I think that's smart, because this way, you are not relying on them. You are relying on you. So you have your mailing list, you have your, you're basically doing grassroots, which... Yeah,
that's the idea.
Yeah, and it's so smart, because it's true. Like, what if let's just say Instagram just crashes for some reason? What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Like, if they're down for a week? I mean, some people I think would just, I hate to even say what they would do. This way you're not relying on that platform. You have your stuff, and you go, okay, well, that's fine. It's great to have that, but if that doesn't go away, we have all of this. And I think it's really smart. That's how you and I connected. And it went from, hey, I'd love your music, to, hey, you want to be on the show? and here we are. And I'm looking at that, and I was like, it's so brilliant. And the CD for Search of Darkness 2 is really cool. I mean, you guys are really on your way to something here, I think.
Awesome.
I think, stay the course, and this is all going to really, I think you guys are really going to hit big. So let's talk about what's on the horizon. Do you have any projects that are next, or are you guys just working on your music right now?
We just finished In Search of Tomorrow. Oh, well, we're getting ready to submit the first batch of music.
Gotcha.
And our main plan this year is we're going to release our first album on vinyl.
Wow.
Nice. Our first, we're going to put together, and we have released an album, but we're going to, basically write a full original album that's inspired by synthwave and horror. Again, like we had no intentions really of releasing music as an artist until we started growing a fan base through the exposure of the documentary, really. We want to basically start. We're using the data that we're collecting from our streams on Spotify and from our feedback from our fans, and we're basically seeing it as a bit of research and putting together what like fan-friendly music. We want to put together like essentially a pop album that's inspired by synthwave and horror. That's not too adventurous.
No, this is great. So obviously you have the website, wearypines.com. What other social media are you guys on?
Yeah, we're on every streaming platform, Spotify, Tidal, Amazon. We've got a website, we've got SoundCloud, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook.
So basically everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, this was a thrill having the two of you on the program. This exceeded anything that I ever expected. This was really a lot of fun.
Awesome.
And please,
thanks very much.
Yeah, listen, please keep us informed as to what's going on. Anything that comes out, let me know. We'll put it up on the website. We'll put it on the website. I'm back in 2009. I don't have a website anymore. Just let me know. I'll put it on the podcast. Listen, Jamie Chambers, Don McLennan Jr., you know them as Weary Pines. This was a thrill. Gentlemen, we got to do this again sometime. Thanks for joining me on the program.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thanks for having us.
And as I put this interview to rest, I really want to thank Jamie and Don for joining me on the program. Those guys are awesome. I mean, we talked, I think, after the interview, we talked like 40 to 60 minutes, just, talking about stuff. They're really cool. I loved having them on the program. I can't wait to have them back on again. And really, if you can support these guys and buy any of their stuff, please do so. You know where to find them, wearypines.com. You can find them on Spotify, SoundCloud, and they're everywhere online. So check them out. By the way, if you want to know what music cues were used under the interview, the best place to find it is on the Graveyard Show Podcast YouTube channel. It is in the show notes for this podcast. I've put each music cue on the time code where they play, and I've also notated what albums they are off of. Most of them are off of In Search of Darkness Part 1 and Part 2, but you also have the Weary Pines self-titled album, as well as the Lakeside Killer soundtrack as well. So you can find it, again, on the Graveyard Show Podcast YouTube channel for this podcast in the show notes. And I want to thank Lawrence, my trusty werewolf, for putting such a great playlist together. Who knew that werewolves were such good DJs? And as promised, I am now going to welcome in my surprise guest. I mean, talk about a small world. Joining me now is someone I just mentioned during my interview with Jamie and Don. He is the director of In Search of Darkness 1 and 2, and he's currently working on his latest documentary called In Search of Tomorrow. And he is here to tell you how you can pre-order the film. I'm talking about, of course, David Weiner. David, how are you?
How's it going? Yeah, I called earlier, and, I knocked on your back door as well. Then I kind of realized the pop-in is probably not cool during the pandemic. So we're back on the phone.
Well, it's great to have you here, and I appreciate that, too. Thank you, by the way.
Sure.
It's great to have you back in here. So In Search of Tomorrow is your latest film. You're currently working on it. For those that are not familiar with it, what can you tell them about the movie?
Well, if you know anything about In Search of Darkness, which was 80s horror documentary that I did In Search of Darkness Part 1 and Part 2. It covered the entire decade from 1980 to 1989, going over really cool, really well-known, really obscure, really eclectic films, and broader conversations about them with over 50 people and icons from the era. And we decided, how cool would that be if we did that with a sci-fi movies documentary? so that's what we're doing. This time we've got 75 people and counting.
Wow.
It's going to have the same exact structure. I am in the process, knee deep right now, in the middle of filming interviews. And I'm very proud to be able to say that we are getting wonderful extended interviews like we did with the last movies. Because of COVID restrictions, we're still able to get it. And it's in person and safe and socially distanced and masked up and all that stuff. But yeah, sci-fi movies, if you like them, whether it's E.T. or Star Wars or Star Trek or The Road Warrior or Life Force, whatever it may be, it's a real broad genre.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. Life Force, underrated film, I think. It is incredible when I saw the trailer, which I will have a link to on the YouTube channel for this podcast. The trailer is fantastic. How was it filming this in the pandemic? How tough was it?
Very tough, because there were times when we first started, actually, because we started with a Kickstarter that did incredibly well, and we were all psyched to go, and then guess what? The world kind of pulled the plug. We all experienced that, and of course we were affected by that as well. And so right when we were raring to go, we just had to wait and twiddle our thumbs. And I was able to get a good start in the summer and the late summer of 2020, once we were able to sort of get out. But then it's been difficult because, the world has kind of changed. A lot of these people who are in the film are older, They were in their prime in their 80s, and now they're, in their 60s and their 70s. So we're getting people to come out, and we're getting people to get the job done. And we're slowly but surely making sure that people are in this, but they are safe.
Like in Search of Darkness Part 2, you are now doing a pre-order for the film. And I'm looking right now. So if people want to go and pre-order the movie and get their name in the credits, among other things, which we'll talk about, where can they go? They
can go to... I'm hearing all sorts of strange interference. I think E.T. is trying to phone home during our conversation.
Sorry.
So I call out the elephant in the room. So I don't know if that's going to be heard on the recording. But anyway, I just thought I'd call that out. But ideally, we could hear each other talking and everyone can hear us. But yeah, go to 80scifidoc.com, 80scifidoc.com. And that gives you all the information you need to know, who's involved, the entire cast, the perks that you can get to pre-order. Not only do you get the movie, but you get lots of cool swag. You get posters and this cool exclusive enamel pin and downloads of the movie and the soundtrack and super cool stuff. And there you'll also get access to our Discord community, which is a weekly active 24/7 community for like-minded sci-fi fans. And we do watch parties and we do interview clip shows, and it's a lot of stuff that's perfect for the pandemic era and perfect for connecting with other fans who love these movies as much as you do.
Yeah, this is great. I mean, I'm scanning through it right now online. I mean, you have the shirts are great. You can get them in either white or black, or you have 3 different choices of posters. Did you bring back the same artists from In Search of Darkness to do these posters for this film?
Yeah. So Graham Humphreys did this cool sort of sci-fi horror hybrid poster, which is epic. Dave Morrell, who did that zombie cheerleader,
yes,
did this amazing painting with the heroes and the villains facing off in the reflection of an astronaut's helmet. And Clayton Bench, who did our In Search of Darkness kid in front of the TV logo and poster. He did this wonderful boy looking into the stars with a bunch of spaceships exploding out of this sort of black hole void.
Yeah, they're so fantastic.
Cool. There's so much fun stuff.
They really are. The Heroes Villains is just so awesome. Seeing Predator and Arnold and RoboCop, and then we've got Khan and Kirk, and I mean, it's just awesome. I mean, it just brings back such great memories.
I can't wait to put it on my wall.
I am telling you, I'm already like, how can I get this now? Well, what's great is that, yes, there are several different levels that you can purchase. Obviously, the most basic is the film itself, and then you go all the way up. You get all kinds of perks and stuff. The one that really kind of looks pretty cool is the executive producer, otherwise known as the Luke Skywalker version, which is like, wow, you get all kinds of stuff on here, which is just fantastic. The Hollywood premiere.
Yeah, I think that gives you a tour of the Death Star, or is it the Rebel Base? I'm not sure which. One of them.
You get to ride on the Enterprise for a little while. It's really cool.
Yeah, exactly. That's the Captain Kirk package. Absolutely.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, the Flash Gordon one, you get to take a rocket sled around the neighborhood. It's pretty good.
This is fantastic.
Disclaimer: these aren't true statements.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, we are joking for those of you that are like, wait a minute, I got to get wait. So, and what's cool is that you also have the trailer on here as well, which is great. And I mean, it's just I just absolutely love this.
Yeah, well, thanks. Wait. You know, the trailer is kind of like the proof of concept. We kickstarted this a year ago. And despite the challenges of the pandemic, we've been able to get this movie going. And we're getting, people are now, like I was saying before, coming out of the woodwork, and we're able to get all these amazing interviews. In fact, I have 4 interviews lined up in the next week, through the next weekend.
Wow.
So we're quite busy. It's exciting to say that you have 75 people who are part of the project, but that means I need to sit down with all 75 before even making this movie. So I'm actively doing this and quite enjoying the geek enthusiasm that I've got, that I have to act cool and get, a good interview. But yeah. I'm sitting down with some icons,
Yeah.
And I'm sitting down with legends who really inspire me. And so the trailer that we've got now is an idea of what we're putting together. But we don't even have all our interviews yet. It's still happening.
I mean, it's just incredible when I look at some of these names on here. Obviously, you have Peter Weller, Sean Young, Sarah Douglas, who of course played Ursa in Superman 2, Henry Thomas, who played Elliot in E.T., Dee Wallace, Nick Castle, Gene Simmons, which is great in Runaway.
He's amazing in Runaway, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a kid. I just mentioned actually to the guys during the interview, I was a Kiss fan. Gene was my guy, so this is awesome seeing him on here.
That's I have to just say, for those who might not be in the know, that's a Tom Selleck movie. Gene Simmons plays the villain.
Yes,
and it was directed by Michael Crichton, and it also has a young Joey Kramer before Flight of the Navigator in there as well. And Joey Kramer is in our movie, and I talked to him not only about Flight of the Navigator, but of course about Runaway and working with Gene Simmons and asking Gene about his tongue.
Very good. I always remember the scene where they're trying to get the bullet out of her arm, and that's just like, oh man, such a brutal sequence.
Right.
It's done so well. You got the body, Jesse Ventura.
Jesse the Body Ventura.
He ain't got time to bleed.
Exactly.
Bill Duke. I mean, this is just Ivan Reitman. I mean, Adrienne Barbeau, Paul Verhoeven. I mean, folks, I can't even. I mean, we could sit here for hours just talking about the guest list. Kurtwood Smith. It was Dick Jones. I mean, this is just. Yep. I absolutely love this. Yeah, Ronnie Cox, who's going to be home in time for cornflakes. I mean, yeah. I mean, these movies just stuck with me. The one-liners in these things are just great.
What's cool about all of these people that I get to sit with is that not only do they talk about their projects that we know them for 80s sci-fi movies and others. But they talk about their favorites as well. So it's not like, Peter Weller just saying, well, RoboCop was cool because, and Buckaroo Banzai and Leviathan. He also talks about, why Blade Runner is more thought-provoking than just a movie, at face value. Things like that. It's very cool, and it's a collective conversation. And that's what makes these movies really fun for me and different, is that in addition to people sharing memories and anecdotes and insights and recontextualization, easy for me to say, about their movies, from so many years ago in the 80s that we all love and are nostalgic for. But they talk about, where they fit in the decade, and they talk about other movies that inspired them or influenced them or made them laugh or made them cry. And that's what's real fun about putting these projects together.
It's fantastic. When is the projected release date for the film?
December.
Okay, so fantastic. So you and I will reconvene at the end of the year. We'll talk about this in greater detail. I cannot
Absolutely.
wait. I really
Ideally
cannot
with
wait.
a better connection.
Yes. Well, you sounded great, so we're all good here. Somehow in the graveyard we have filters that get some of those little ghosts and gremlins out of the line. So
well, that's par for the course. Right?
Exactly, of course. David, thanks so much. Listen, congratulations on the In Search of Darkness films. By the way, it was streaming on Shudder. In Search of Darkness was streaming on Shudder the other night. Mrs. Caretaker and I were sitting, and we're like, oh, hey. So of course,
and In Search of Darkness Part 2, it debuts on Shudder on April 26th.
Oh, fantastic.
So if you've been waiting for that or heard about it or haven't seen it yet, or we're wondering why In Search of Darkness 1 only was about North American films and not international films or some of the deeper cuts, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised when you see it.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. Hey, listen, is there, I'm hearing rumblings that maybe there's a 3 in the works early, perhaps?
I can confirm that we are in the works with Part 3 by popular demand.
I can't wait.
I did 2, and I figured that might be it. That might be the nail in the coffin, but, hopefully I got at least an opportunity to continue the tale and show so much more that 80s horror had to offer in the 80s. And everyone said, for the most part, like, oh my gosh, let's bring on 3. I could keep going. So
yeah,
we're happy to continue.
No, I definitely agree. I think you can go on for a while. I mean,
hundreds of movies.
I mean, really, yeah, it's incredible. You've done 9 hours worth of documentary, and you still have so much more you can uncover, which is incredible.
Scratching the surface.
Unbelievable. Well, listen, David, thanks for hanging out, giving all this great information. Cannot wait to see this film, and cannot wait to talk to you more about it when we get towards the end of the year.
Always appreciate you having me on, and maybe one day when I knock on your back door, you'll let me in.
Not a problem. We'll have some whiskey or some coffee or whatever you'd like to drink, and talk movies.
Always unannounced. That's what makes it fun.
I love it. Well, have I given you enough to digest today? Not only did you get to hear from the band that scored In Search of Darkness 1, 2, and now In Search of Tomorrow, not only did I get the director from those films on here, not only do you now know how you can pre-order In Search of Tomorrow, not only did I get you information on when In Search of Darkness 2 is coming on Shudder, I got confirmation of a Part 3, and then one day Dave is going to come and hang out at the graveyard. So there you go. This has been quite a show. This was a lot of fun and really unexpected. I mean, this just happened. I mean, talk about just timing. It's awesome. Really quickly, I want to go over the different perks you can get with In Search of Tomorrow. So you have the Marty McFly, which is the first perk, which is a digital version of In Search of Tomorrow. You get a online community access, virtual premiere watch party, and you can get your name in the credits. Then you have the Flash Gordon perk. With the Flash Gordon perk, you get a digital copy of the movie, name in the credits, online community access, virtual premiere, and then you get In Search of Tomorrow Blu-ray, In Search of Darkness digital. You get the 3 posters and an In Search of Tomorrow sticker. Then the next perk is the Kyle Reese perk. You get everything that I just mentioned in the Flash Gordon and the Marty McFly, plus you get In Search of Tomorrow on DVD. Then you get the Admiral Kirk perk, which is, again, everything prior that I just mentioned, plus you get the T-shirt, official soundtrack, the enamel pin and stickers as well. And then you get the next perk, which is the Roy Batty perk, which is associate producer credit on IMDb, poster, movie credits. You receive 2 tickets to the Hollywood premiere. And you get to do that with crews, special guests. You get to do the after party. So there you go. And then obviously everything that comes with the Admiral Kirk perk. Then you have the Ellen Ripley, which is the producer credit on IMDb, poster, movie credits, 2 tickets to the premiere, same thing as everything prior as well. And then you get the executive producer perk, which is the Luke Skywalker. And again, you get everything that comes in the prior packages as well. So there you have it. Check it out. In Search of Tomorrow. If you are a fan of sci-fi, you got to check this film out. And David will be back later in the year to talk about the film. All right, I'm going to get out of here now. It's time to start closing down the graveyard. Got a lot of show here. So, again, you can find the Graveyard Show podcast on Slasher, Graveyard Show Podcast. And, of course, the email, gyspodcast@gmail.com. You can find the Graveyard Show podcast on Apple Podcast, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify, everywhere podcasts exist, and of course YouTube. Just look for Graveyard Show Podcast. And of course, if you know anyone who's a fan of horror, please invite them to enter the graveyard. New listeners and friends are always welcome. Now, instead of just bidding you adieu, I'm gonna take a little liberty here. When I first thought about putting the Graveyard Show podcast together all those years ago, I'd always thought about having music at the beginning and the end of the show, but because I didn't have license agreements with BMI and ASCAP, I didn't want to get in trouble using commercial music. So since I have the fellas stuff here, why not end with another cue that I have not played yet. This is going to be a track off of In Search of Darkness, and it's called The Bleeding Pines. It's one of my favorite cues that these guys have created. It's really great. So let's start it now. And yeah, there we go. So this will take us out. So thank you again for joining me. It's great having you here. Please be safe, stay healthy. Look forward to having you back here soon. And man, this changes everything, having the music playing like this. All right, as you exit the graveyard, I would like to remind you to please lock the gate behind you. We wouldn't want anyone to get out. Until next time.